topic we have already discussed yesterday about prejudice and discrimination. Now we have talked about what is prejudice actually. These are examples of attitudes towards a particular group, and what is the other feature, that they are usually negative in nature and in many cases may be based on stereotypes. So it is not always the same thing happen, because they are using that many cases it is based upon stereotypes. Now what the question arises, what do you mean by stereotypes? Stereotypes, you can say the cognitive component, as we discussed about the attitudes. The cognitive component means the kind of thinking process you have for that particular topic or for that particular group. So stereotypes are what? These are cluster of ideas regarding the characteristics of a specific group. So how you will going to understand both the concept? First, make it clear in your mind. Just understand it like this, that stereotypes sometimes provide the foundation, right? It is a kind of basis on which your prejudices are formed, right? Suppose stereotypes, you can also say it is a kind of assumption you are having about a particular group and about their particular characteristics. Suppose if I say that boys are generally messy and unclean and unorganized, right? I have this stereotype regarding the boys community, that they are not organized, they are messy, they are unclean. So I'm regarding every boy into, I'm just tagging every boy to be into that category, right? So it is a kind of stereotype. I'm just assuming, I don't know any boy. If happen to meet someone, but I just make this impression before knowing him, before knowing about his personality. I have this assumption in my mind generally that boys are messy and unclean and unorganized, right? This is a kind of stereotype. Now, after that, when I form a prejudice against the boy, prejudice is what? First of all, it is based upon some stereotypes. Prejudice, you can say, a kind of belief, right? Belief, as we discussed, there are certain things, there are certain ideas behind that. And in prejudices, what has been added? The affective part also sometimes. When I say affective part, a feeling of dislike could be there, a feeling of hatred could be there, right? So affective part also accompany prejudice. So I may start, disliking that boy. I may start developing a feeling of hatred for that boy. So this is going more and more stronger. Stereotypes, you can see that these are very specific, and these are generally about specific features or characteristics about the persons, those who are, those who belong to that group, right? Just try to understand, just take any example in your mind and try to clarify the things. When I just gave you the example about a boy community, right? In the same way, if I start assuming that people with blue eyes are very cunning, right? This is just an stereotype. See, again and again I'm saying, it is not uh, written somewhere, or I'm just expressing my views in general. I'm just trying to explain you the concept by giving examples which may not exist in reality. So I may have this thinking that people with blue eyes are very cunning. These are what I have, assigned some characteristics. Characteristics क्या हो गई? Blue eyes. और जिनके भी blue eyes हैं, चाहे वो whether they belong to any age group, whether they belong to any gender, I will start taking them as cunning people, right? So, and when I form a prejudice against those people, so this is based upon my stereotype. So I may start developing a feeling of hatred, a feeling of dislike. I may become very careful in dealing with such people, because I have this assumption that these are very cunning people. They may play tricks with me, right? Getting the things? So in the manner I made you yesterday, written some things. I'm just repeating it again. Prejudice, when we talk about stereotypes, it is the cognitive component. Just write in bracket cognitive component and stereotype. Second thing I told you about dislike or hatred, the thing which I just explained, it consists of, write in bracket, affective component. Fine, ABC. Again, we are discussing in the form of ABC. and discrimination, right in the bracket, behavioral component. Fine. So A, B, C. It all comprises of prejudice. Fine. So prejudice and stereotypes. Now, what else? Prejudice may also get translated into discrimination. When I say the behavioral component, it means discrimination. When a person starts showing that prejudice in the form of his behavior, in the form of any activity which he or she is performing. So when I start discriminating people on the basis of my belief, right? As they have given very nice example, because you all are students of history, so you can easily relate and understand the things. History contains numerous examples of discrimination based on race and social class or caste. See, these are very general prejudices when we talk about whether it is related to casteism, whether it is related to racism, whether it is related to colorism, right? So these are very general example of prejudices. The genocide committed by the Nazis, maybe you have gone through this portion in your history. The genocide committed by the Nazis in Germany against Jewish people is an extreme example of how prejudice can lead to hatred, discrimination, and mass killing of innocent people. See, prejudices are very harmful and very dangerous as compared to stereotypes. What is happening in prejudices? People start performing their behavior into that direction. And as we said, that these are generally negative in nature. So what it is resulting in? It is resulting in mass killing of innocent people sometimes, and it is resulting in a lot of form of discrimination, which can be proved very dangerous, whether it is related to some social uh, aspect, whether it is related to some political aspect, whether it is related to some religious aspect, right? Prejudice. Now the next important thing under this heading. See, we have explained prejudice and stereotype. Fine. We have also explained that how it happened in the form of discrimination whenever we talk about the behavioral component. Right. The next important thing is what? Prejudices can exist without being shown in the form of discrimination. One thing. Similarly, discrimination can be shown without prejudice. But the things they are saying that prejudices can also be shown without in the form of discrimination. That means I may have a belief, I may have a thought process about certain topic, about certain people, but I never show in the form of my behavior. I never start, maybe I suppose the same example with the blue eyes, people with blue eyes, right? I do not like them, but I never discriminate. I never say in someday if I have to sit with a person in a class. Let's take an example with the blue eyes. Fine, I will not show that discrimination in the form of behavior. I will quietly sit with that person. But somewhere from inside I do not like, but still I will be sitting there. So I'm not showing any kind of discrimination to that person. I'm talking to her or him in a natural and very obvious manner. So no discrimination is shown in the form of behavior by me. So this is also a form of prejudices, right? I'm having a particular belief, but I'm not showing it by discriminating. It may happen the other way around also, right? That discrimination can also be shown without prejudice. I start discriminating certain people, but I'm not having any kind of prejudice. I'm just, it may be because of many factors that we're going to discuss Abhi, after this topic, we're going to discuss. So I may, start discrimination. I may start showing the discrimination in my behavior, but in reality, I do not have any kind of prejudice against that person or against that group. Fine. So both the things could happen. So the two go together very often. Wherever prejudice and discrimination exist, conflicts are very likely to arise between groups within the same society. So it is for sure that when prejudice and discrimination both are there, so what will happen? Conflicts will arise there in the society among various groups. So it is, arise. It is somewhere, making the situation worse, dangerous and harmful for individuals. Our own society has witnessed many deplorable instances of discrimination with and without prejudice based on gender, religion, community, caste, physical handicap, and illnesses such as AIDS. So these are very specific examples. Just try to remember 2 to 3 examples so that you can explain it in your answer. So these are general kind of prejudices. As I said, it is related to basically your caste, religion, your race, your color. It is also related to many kind of dangerous diseases like AIDS, physical handicap is also there. If a person is physically handicapped, we have certain kind of discriminatory behavior towards those persons. We used to do this in our daily life, and whenever we'll start noticing this, you will also come to realize that whenever a physically handicapped person is there, we in a directly or indirectly or consciously or unconsciously, we used to show a discriminatory behavior towards that person in a way, right? Now, the cognitive and emotional components of prejudice are more difficult to change. See, 3 things are there we talked about, but they are saying whenever cognitive and emotional components are there, it is very difficult to change. Whether cognitive, that means whether it is related to belief, and whether it is related to affective part, that is a feeling of dislike or hatred. They are saying these 2 components are very difficult to change, but we can change the discriminatory behavior. We can change the behavioral component. How come? As they are saying, there are certain laws, right? In our society, in our democratic society, in a democratic country, we have certain laws. Fine. And those laws are able to curb that discriminatory behavior somehow. As I just gave you, as I just gave you an example about any caste. So if we used to discriminate on the basis of caste to any person, he may file a case. He may file a FIR against us because this is illegal. We cannot discriminate. We cannot, say no to a person for giving job just because of his caste. This is just an example, right? So the component could be easily curbed or stopped, but the cognitive and affective component of prejudice is difficult to change, right? Because there are no particular laws as such to change these components. Fine. So this is all about prejudice, stereotypes, and discrimination. Under this, you have to be clear with prejudice and discrimination, and you're going to explain both these concepts with the help of these examples. Fine. I made you written certain things. You don't have to write those things in your answer. This was just for the explanation. Fine, children? Okay, chalo, let's move further. Now, social psychologists have shown that prejudice has one or more of the following sources. Now, let us start discussing about the sources of prejudices. Taking the first one, learning. Like other attitudes, prejudices can also be learned through association, reward and punishment, observing others, group or cultural norms, and exposure to information that encourages prejudice. We have discussed all these factors earlier, whether it is related to attitude formation, whether it is related to attitude change. So in the same manner, how prejudices are forming, we are getting reward for certain kind of behavior, we are getting punishment for certain kind of behavior. So in this manner also, it is help us to form certain prejudices against certain group or person. Norms and exposure to information also encourages. We have read something about a certain community, about a group, and we start forming prejudices based upon that short information, that confined information. We never try to get in-depth knowledge, but we just make prejudice or any kind of belief against any group on the basis of that short information. Fine. So these are the sources which help us in forming or learning prejudices. The family, reference groups, personal experiences, and the media may play a role in learning of prejudices. So all these are examples at how we form or how we learn certain beliefs, certain prejudices against certain groups, right? Let's see the second one. A strong social identity and in-group bias. Individuals who have a strong sense of social identity and have a very positive attitude towards their own group boost this attitude by holding negative attitudes toward other groups. These are shown as prejudices. You all can observe these things in your community, in your society, in your surroundings, that we as an individual, we always refer ourselves to belong to some group, whether it is like Hindu group or any other community, any religion group, or within the society there are lots of groups. As I just talk about, let's see the society in which we are living. So we have a particular group, we have a particular panel there, right? So those people, start developing a very strong sense of social identity that we belong to this group, we belong to this particular society. So they are helping each other in a very cooperative manner, they are very intimate to each other, but they are having a very, negative, you can say, or a feeling of dislike for other groups. So if you are having a very strong social identity about your group, so there are chances that you start criticizing or start developing a feeling of dislike for other groups or for other communities. What is the third one? Scapegoating. Scapegoating, this is a phenomena by which the majority group places the blame on a minority outgroup. Just take an example, any example of majority and minority, right? So what is happening in scapegoating? It's a very popular word. Scapegoating, like what is happening? A majority group who all of a sudden united, right? And they start blaming the minority group. Why? Because they know that there are very few people in the minority group. There is also not too much unity there. So they cannot, protest. They cannot rebel. They cannot defend themselves. So what the majority group usually do, they just show their frustration, they just show their negative attitudes toward that weaker group. Minority group is also considered a weaker group because they cannot raise their voice as they are very few in number. So scapegoating में क्या हो रहा है कि the minority or the weaker group is paying a very high cost, because majority group is dominating also, majority group is exploiting also them, right, in every field of life. Fine. So next one is this. This is a new concept, I think, for you, scapegoating. Another new concept, kernel of truth concept. What is it? Sometimes people may continue to hold stereotypes because they think that after all, there must be some truth or kernel of truth in what everyone says about the other group. What does this mean? See, if we observe the people around us showing the same kind of stereotype, showing the same kind of prejudice against a particular group. So what we gradually and slowly start developing, we also start developing the same kind of things for that group. We start believing if everyone is showing the same thing. Let us take an example about your class. If you all people, out of 50 people, suppose 40 people are having the same kind of attitude, the same kind of prejudice against a particular student in your class. In the initial stage, you may have, don't have any kind of negative or hatred feeling for that person, for that child. But when you see that everybody is showing same kind of discriminatory behavior towards that particular child, or everybody is responding in the same manner, so gradually what happens, this is a psychological thing, that we start believing the majority. We start believing that there is some truth. I all behave in the same manner with that child, there must be some truth. There must be some things that make all of them, to behave in the same manner with that child. So initially you were not doing any wrong to that child, you are not showing any discriminatory behavior, but just by seeing others and you start developing it from inside, there is some truth. This is right, right? This is a right behavior which we are showing to that child. and you also start doing the same thing. That is known as kernel of truth. The last one is self-fulfilling prophecy. What does this mean? In some cases, the group that is the target of prejudice is itself responsible for continuing the prejudice. What does it mean? Suppose let's take the example of a minority group, as we have discussed in scapegoating. So what this self-fulfilling prophecy is saying, the minority group is also somewhere responsible for the kind of treatment and discrimination or the behavior they are getting. That is the target group. Let's not use the word minority group again and again. Let's use the target group. So the target group is also responsible somewhere, for the kind of behavior they are getting. Self-fulfilling prophecy. For example, if the target group is described as dependent and therefore unable to make progress, the members of this target group may actually behave in a way that proves this description to be true. In this way, they strengthen the existing prejudice. Suppose a target group is there and everyone is blaming that group to be very lethargic, to be very indisciplined, to be very insincere, right? So what happened? The group also start, doing or start behaving in the same manner. They also listen the same things from everyone, and what happens? Slowly and slowly, gradually, they also start behaving in the same manner. The same manner in the unorganized manner, in a very indisciplined manner, in a very insincere manner. So self-fulfilling prophecy, so somewhere that group is also responsible for continuing that prejudice or that discriminatory behavior towards them. As you all remember in chapter number, I think 4, yes, psychological disorders were there, or therapies were there. We have discussed about the ill people, right? The mentally ill people, sorry. So what is a general tag given to those people in our society? That they are mad people, they are crazy, right? They do not make sense. So what happened? There was a line that they also start believing the same thing. If a mentally ill person is there and he listen the same things from everyone, he is experiencing the same kind of discriminatory behavior from everyone, so he also start behaving in the same manner. He also starts showing the same symptoms. So what happened? Whenever we see the same things, we start believing it. In kernel of truth में क्या हो रहा है कि we start thinking in the same manner as others are doing, because what we think is some kind of truth or some truth is there. Self-fulfilling prophecy mein what is happening? The target group is himself responsible, right? He also start behaving in the same manner, that is favoring the characteristics which has been given by the other group members, the majority group members. Fine. So this is all about the sources of prejudices, learning a strong social identity, and in-group bias. In-group bias, I explained you. In-group bias means the group which you belong. So there are biases. Biases in the sense that you are not behaving properly with other group. A strong social identity because you identify yourself with your group very strongly. Scapegoating, all you understand that majority group is somewhere dominating or blaming minority group for their own problems, whether it is related to social problem, whether it is related to economic or political problem. Other one, kernel of truth, everyone understood again that they continue to hold stereotypes because they think that there must be some truth why everyone is saying the same thing. And the last one is self-fulfilling prophecy. That means the group that is the target of prejudice is itself responsible for continuing the prejudice, because the target group is described, suppose, as dependent and therefore unable to make progress. So members of this target group may actually behave in a way. They will start favoring the characteristics that is proving their description to be true, right? So this is all about the sources of prejudice. And with this, we come to an end with our chapter number 6. Fine. Ma'am, yes, please stop the recording.